Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley, and as always, thank you so much for taking time to be here with me. I know there's a lot of places you could be, so I don't take it lightly that you're here. Now, today, we are going to talk all about to grit or to quit. I'm super excited about this conversation. And before I go there, I do want to update some of you. Last episode, I did share with you some behind the scenes chaos that was happening in my own personal life. And one of those things was that my 2-year-old Great Dane was scheduled to have his eyes ablated. So he had to have his eyes removed, which caused me a lot of emotional turmoil because my brain has a lot of thoughts about what it means to lose your eyes. And I want to just update you that he's doing amazingly well. He has adapted so beautifully. We are less than 2 weeks out from surgery, and he is just inspiring me daily. I absolutely cannot believe his resilience and his ability to adapt so quickly. And man, do I wish more of that for all of us. To get out of our own ways. And you know, it's really funny because the ophthalmologist who operated on my dog, I felt like he was my counselor about 10 days before the surgery. And he said to me, Courtney, your brain is very attached to Sully's eyes. Sully's brain is not. Because my prefrontal cortex was doing a lot of thinking about my thinking, right? I had all these expectations for what my dog's life was supposed to look like. And it was my thoughts that were causing me a lot of suffering. Now, it's okay to be sad that my dog was losing his eyes, and I allowed myself to feel sad. But at the end of the day, my dog did not have all those thoughts. My dog lost his sight, and he adapted. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me about the power of thought. So, moving on to today's topic. When I talk about grit, which obviously is in my business name, Grace and Grit, I am referring to the necessity for self-discipline to develop yourself in powerful ways. I'm a big fan of self-discipline. I have long been an advocate for self-discipline. A lot of the work that I do with my students and clients is helping them to develop their own discipline. In fact, a lot of you know I have a private membership group called Rumble and Rise, and the theme of our work next month in February is all about the art of self-discipline. And I'm just going to do a little side note here. Those of you who are not yet in that community, get in there. It's amazing. It's $59 a month. There are so many resources at your disposal. There's an incredible community. There's an opportunity every single week to be coached by me. There are a plethora of resources and support at your disposal. So if you need a little help along your journey, go to graceandgrit.com, ready to rumble, and you can find out more about it. Self-discipline is an interesting conversation because people think about it typically as something that kind of makes you feel bad, right? People have maybe a past experience of someone disciplining them for making a mistake or, making a poor choice or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of judging and shaming and bullying. And that is not at all the type of self-discipline I teach or I promote. The self-discipline that I teach is born out of self-love. It is having so much love and respect for yourself and the life that you get to live that you are willing to constrain yourself and do hard things. It is a necessary part of becoming your best self, whatever that means for you. So I heard somewhere the difference between these two levels of discipline, self-discipline, is one is a carrot and one is a stick. I promote the carrot. The carrot is a reward. Self-discipline is a kind thing to do. It is what helps you to shape an amazing life versus self-discipline as the stick, which is what we use to kind of, flog ourselves with, like make ourselves feel terrible and, really beat ourselves up from a space of self-loathing. I want you to think of self-discipline as the carrot, not the stick. Now, what we're here to talk about today may feel a little bit like the opposite of self-discipline or grit. And it's really this idea of knowing when to quit. Because although I am all for perseverance and grit and self-discipline, there are absolutely moments in your life where applying grit, leaning into hard things, and digging deeper is the healthiest thing you could do. And there are also moments where backing the hell off, letting go, and even quitting is the most nourishing thing you could do for yourself. And I find a lot of women struggle with giving themselves permission to shed what no longer serves them, to let go of things that they have outgrown, and to quit practices that really aren't getting them anywhere. And I understand it because as a culture, popular media culture kind of talks about quitting using words like, failure or giving up or weakness. And it certainly can be, right? We can quit for the wrong reasons, but you get to decide your reasons. So quitting can certainly lead to failure and, giving into weaknesses, but quitting can also be very courageous and kind. And just like self-discipline, quitting can be an extension of self-love and self-respect. Just because you pursued something at one time in your life, even aggressively, with passion, does not mean that it makes sense for you to pursue that thing for the rest of your life. Not in the same way. In fact, I see the rigidity that a lot of women have in their expectation that things should always look the same be the source of their demise. I see the rigidity in not being flexible with self-care or the way your life is composed being very depleting. So an example would be, I see a lot of women in their, late 40s and 50s and beyond trying to exercise like they did in their 20s. I see people who had a passion earlier in their life that made a lot of sense, but now they just kind of feel about it. And yet they won't let it go, but it's consuming a lot of time and energy. I want you to, let me invite you. Let's say that. I'm inviting you to stop focusing on who you have been and start focusing on who you want to be. I read a little meme recently that I absolutely loved. It said, "Your past doesn't need you. Your future does." And I have said this many times over. It will sound very familiar to a lot of you, but I see so many women pursuing a version of themselves that they were in the past, meaning they exercise the same, they're pursuing the same things, like nothing has really changed, that they are literally robbing themselves of future possibility. Life is supposed to look different. It's okay to evolve and change and let go of things that are no longer serving you. But what I see a lot of people doing that is causing a lot of unnecessary suffering is that they are conducting their life by always adding more without letting go, without ever letting anything go. So it's a constant exercise of addition and never subtraction. And then they wonder why they're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted and depleted and resentful. And it's no mystery. Time and energy are limited resources. Bandwidth is not limitless. You only get so much time, energy, and focus in a day. So if you're going to add something new to your life, you have got to respect that to keep things balanced and to keep yourself in that beautiful state of whelm, not overwhelm, not underwhelm, but whelm, you are going to have to let some things go. And man, do we hate making sacrifices, right? We want our cake and we want to eat it and we don't want to have any consequences. And a lot of women have been conditioned to believe they can do it all, right? You can have the really successful business and have 2.5 kids and have the perfect marriage and all the great friendships and have amazing passions and pursuits on the side, and on it goes. And you can choose to believe that. I believe that belief comes at a cost. And it comes at the cost called burnout. I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. When this was years ago, I had a training facility called Alternate Route, and it was a personal training facility. And I taught multiple classes a day. I was personal training clients at all hours of the day. And in addition to that, I was also starting my remote coaching business. So I was coaching people all over the US and into Canada. So I was busy. And then I got pregnant. And somewhere in my delusional brain, it never occurred to me that I would have to adjust my way of life. I was convinced that I was so healthy and I was so organized that I could do it all and I could do it all well. And that train crashed about, I would say like 6 months into having a newborn baby. I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go train clients. And then I was coaching and I was pumping breast milk between clients. It was chaotic. I was exhausted. I was depressed. I was not recovering well from what was a difficult delivery. And because I was basically adding, and never subtracting. And I've done this so many times because that's the way of it, isn't it? My husband calls them taskmasters. We keep repeating certain behaviors until we eventually hit the brick wall hard enough that we're like, oh, maybe I should walk around the brick wall instead of keep running into it. There's a different route. And the route that I'm offering you is that there are times where quitting makes a lot of sense. And quitting doesn't mean you quit everything necessarily, right? So if you're going to quit a certain way of eating, like you're counting macronutrients and you decide to quit that because it doesn't really make sense in your life, it doesn't mean that you quit eating healthy. It doesn't have to mean that, right? You're just recalibrating. You're readjusting to make that thing fit into your life in a more sensible way. And when I think about just this whole conversation of letting go and shedding, I also think a lot about how the body regenerates. Your body is always regenerating itself. Cells are dying, new cells are being created, right? Our body basically is in a process of regenerating all the time. And that's how we stay healthy. It's how we live as long as we do. And you, my friend, are in a process of constantly regenerating, not just biologically, but mentally and spiritually. It is your job to evolve as a human and to keep regenerating into more robust versions of yourself. And to keep doing that, you must learn how to shed and let go of things that are no longer serving you. Shedding, like you think about, I think about losing my hair, right? First of all, I have a lot of hair. I have very thick, very curly hair. So I shed more than most. I always joke with my husband, it's a shame that I can't like make rugs out of my hair and sell them because it could be a great revenue stream. But I shed a lot. I lose hair because basically my hair is regenerating itself, right? It's creating room for new growth, new possibility. Our skin, we shed dead skin cells all the time to make room for new skin, more health. And of course, I always go down these deep rabbit holes when I'm researching for these podcasts. And I was really taken with this whole word of regeneration. So I looked it up. And one of the things I came across was the synonyms for regenerating. And some of the synonyms I came across were exhilarate, reborn, revive, redeem, reproduce, restore, reform, refresh, renew, renovate, and revitalize. And I read those words and my whole body was like, yes, that's what I want. I want all of those things in my life. I want to keep reviving and restoring and reforming and refreshing and revitalizing myself, which means I have to be willing to shed things that no longer fit. Because if I don't, it will come at a very steep price to my mental and physical well-being. And looking up the definition of shedding is getting rid of something unwanted or unnecessary. It's letting something fall off or fall away. Not because it wasn't valued at one time, but because it's no longer needed. And here's the truth. No one can tell you what to shed. No one can tell you what to let go of. No one can tell you when to quit. Only you know those answers. But be willing to seek those answers. When is quitting the kind thing to do? When is quitting a form of self-care? That is your work. Let's talk a little bit about when it is appropriate to quit. Even though it's your work, I can't tell you exactly what to quit or when it's going to be the right time, but I can give you some tips around it. So I think it's an important practice to consistently reevaluate your values and priorities at different ages and stages of life. Because let's face it, like I know for me, my values and priorities at almost 44 are very different than they were at 24. I mean, radically different. But if I'm always looking through the lens of my values at 24, I am going to keep up a lot of practices that are no longer serving me. So I have to be clear on what my values and priorities are at this age and stage of life. And if I find that something I am doing no longer fits into those values and priorities, I am going to let it go. I will give you a great example here. So a lot of you you're a part of the Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community. It is a free Facebook community I have been running for almost 6 years. It has almost 2,000 women in it. It has been such a precious and amazing experience for me to facilitate this group over the past many years. And I have put a lot of time, energy, and focus on this group. And I realized probably a year ago that I wasn't subtracting in my business. I kept adding all of these things, but I wasn't subtracting. And I was getting burnout, and I was tired, and I was frustrated, and I had moments of resentment. And when I really took responsibility for that and started to look at what I needed to shed in order to make space for new growth in my personal and professional life, one of the things that I came up with was I need to let go of this group, because there's a lot of ways for me to support people for free. I offer a lot of ways for you to get support for free. And I have a lot of paid offers. So it was not necessarily any longer a value or priority for me to run the group. And please don't hear me saying I don't adore it. This was a very difficult decision for me to make. I literally started toying with the decision over probably 18 months ago, and I just made the announcement the other day. And which is funny, right? Because I have done podcasts on the power of deciding fast. That was not a fast decision, but it's a great example. I knew the answer for myself 18 months ago and I still hung on to it. So it was a hard decision. I let go of it. I sort of quit, if you will, that pursuit because I knew it would open up space and energy in other places where I want to grow and develop and create new things. So that is an example of something no longer fitting. I think it also is appropriate to consider quitting when you recognize that you don't have the bandwidth and you aren't willing to create it. So again, it could be something that you've just been dedicated to for a long time. You've given a lot of attention to, but you also recognize that it's costing you time and energy that you simply don't have, and you're not willing to make time for it. I also think that often, this has happened to me in many times in my life, I see it happening to my clients all the time, that our reasons for pursuing the things that we once were no longer feel relevant. So we no longer like our reasons for doing some of the things we're doing. This comes up a lot in diet industry, by the way, because I work with a lot of women coming out of the diet industry, women who have been on diet after diet after diet. And when we really get to the root of what they are pursuing and why, a lot of times they discover they don't like their reasons. They don't like the energy behind it. They don't like their reasons for pursuing it in the first place. And so we do a lot of work around that. So it's not that they quit pursuing health, but they quit some of the strategies they were using that no longer fit. I also think it's really appropriate to quit when we recognize that the cost outweighs the benefits, right? So another example, early in my career, I was an instructor trainer for Stop Pilates, which is a really large international Pilates company. And I had the awesome privilege at a very young age of basically getting to travel the world because I worked for them and they trusted me enough to run courses for instructors. And it was a huge privilege. And I still see it as that. I had a great rapport with Moira Stott and Lindsay Merrithew. I spent a lot of time, money, and energy pursuing that level of education. And there came a point where I wanted to teach more than Pilates. There was just, I started to feel confined, and I wanted to be having a more expansive offering for my clients other than this just one form of exercise. And the answer for me at that point was to leave sort of that instructor trainer role, even though I had worked really hard for it and I was really proud of it. And I've never regretted that decision because it allowed me to grow in so many other ways. So I have so much respect and appreciation for the experience and the education. But there came a point where quitting, shedding, letting it go made the most sense. I also think it's time to quit when it feels like the kind thing to do. Maybe it's a kind thing to do. I mean, when I say kind thing to do, I'm specifically talking about a kind thing to do for yourself. It's self-love. It's self-love to realize that even though you put time, energy, and maybe money and focus into something, it doesn't mean it's always healthy to continue it. And a lot of times it can be unkind to know that you should let it go, but you don't let yourself let it go. I also think of sort of relationships when I think of a kind thing to do. I think of a lot of relationships, friendships for me, and certainly romantic relationships that I let go of. I quit because it was the kindest thing to do for myself. I made the decision from a space of self-love. Now, I think it's really important always, before you quit anything, that you spend time coaching yourself. And some of the questions you can ask yourself are, why were you pursuing the thing in the first place? Like, what was your original driver? Is that still valid? How will quitting be useful to you? So this kind of goes back to, I think of like the bandwidth, conserving time and energy. When you make the decision to quit, are you thinking short term or are you thinking long term? And here's what I mean by that is a lot of times quitting offers us a lot of relief, but temporarily, because we don't have to keep doing the work. But 3 or 6 months down the road, are you going to regret that decision because you just needed a little bit of temporary relief? And I'll talk more about that here in just a second because I want to talk about restoration. The other question I would encourage you to ask before you quit is, have you managed yourself in a way that allows you to quit without any regret? So do you like how fully you showed up to try to make it work before you quit? A lot of times, again, people are just reacting by quitting, which only offers them that temporary relief. And then there's the consequence of a lot of regret down the road. And I just want to make sure you really like your reasons for quitting and that you feel like you showed up in the most powerful way before you decided to quit. I also think it's important that you know exactly what you're quitting because this is where we get a lot into all or nothing thinking, right? I'm quitting this boot camp, so I'm never going to, and I'm never going to exercise again. That's extreme. That's unnecessary. Quit the boot camp, but not all exercise. Maybe you've been doing some kind of nutrition program where you've been counting calories for a long time and you decide, I don't want to count calories anymore. Okay, great. But that doesn't mean you can't still stay mindful of your portions. So often we get into the space of, okay, well, I can either exercise or not. I can either eat healthy or not. But really what I'm referring to here is quitting certain strategies that no longer fit, right? So let's talk a little bit about when not to quit, because I think this is important. So when I say not to quit, I mean, when should we be applying more grit and digging deeper rather than using the quitting as a short-term answer? So we should never quit when it's about difficult emotions, because you can learn how to feel any kind of emotion and still persevere. And I think that honestly is a very important part of personal development. And all of my students and clients will tell you that this is what we do a lot of work around. Learning how to feel difficult emotion without making it mean that you're broken or faulty or need fixing or any of the things. So you can learn how to feel any emotion. And if you could, feel any emotion all the way through without distracting or numbing or denying it, think of what you could accomplish in your life, right? So learning how to feel difficult emotions all the way through is a very powerful piece of personal development. I also don't think you should quit when things get uncomfortable, because they will. If you're living life with an ounce of boldness, you're going to have to learn new skills and do new things and look at where you could do better and reassess when things aren't working. And all of that's uncomfortable. But does it mean you should quit? Well, you get to decide. But I think instead of it being an invitation to quit, it's an invitation to move forward, because that's how you develop confidence. It's how you develop skill. I also don't think you should quit when you have this thought that it's taking too long, right? Usually when someone is really focused on a timeline, like I must do X in 30 days, to me, with the more of a hurry we're in, the less likely we are to sustain whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. So focusing on process over outcome is really the invitation there, right? When you find yourself getting all worked up because things are not happening in the timeline that you expected, you certainly could use that as a reason to quit, or you could see it as an invitation to find ways of enjoying the process more so you can stay in it. I also see a lot of people quitting unnecessarily because of self-doubt. And this pains me so much as a coach because self-doubt is a part of the human experience. It really is. And it has so much to teach us. And when we make self-doubt mean, again, that there's something wrong with us, that we're never going to succeed, that this thing is not for us, of course, you're just going to want to quit. But you could also choose to look at self-doubt as an opportunity to learn about yourself and develop yourself and ultimately come out more confident on the other side. And here's the truth. I see this a lot. A lot of people quit on their goals, on things that they're really passionate about, because really what they need is a break. They need to rest. They need to pause. They need to acclimate. And unfortunately, a lot of people overlook the importance of restoration in the process of achieving, right? Because when we're working towards achieving something, we're so focused on the grit. We're so focused on the work and the action that it's really easy to overlook the importance of restoration. And so this is why grace and grit, giving yourself permission, being strategic about restoration, is a very graceful thing to do for yourself. And if you don't build it into your strategy, you will probably be more likely to quit on yourself. So I want to just finish this by asking you, what is it time for you to let go of? Because you know. And kind of like my decision to let go of this Facebook group that took me 18 months to let go of, I want you to decide faster than that. Because you already know. It's probably not a hard question for you to answer. But why aren't you giving yourself permission to let go of it? Because you're going to have to feel some difficult emotion. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. You don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. But you can work your way through all of that. And the other question I think you should ask is, where might you need to insert more grace so you can keep going with the things that you really want for yourself? Where do you need to insert more grace so you can apply more grit? You probably know the answer to that too. I will tell you, in all the years I've trained women and coached women, they often say, Courtney, I'm really good at the grit. I'm not so good at the grace. We're not so good at giving ourselves permission to back off, to let go, to restore, to be kind, to extend compassion to ourselves. But we can learn all those things because they're all just a practice. So I want to close by saying, if you love the Grace and Grit podcast, you will love Rumble and Rise. And again, Rumble and Rise is a space really unlike anything you're going to find in the wellness industry. It's a vault of online resources and support and education to help you become more self-directed in the health arena and well beyond. So really, the tools that you learn inside of Rumble and Rise will help you to elevate any area of your life. I offer monthly masterclasses with very actionable takeaways. So we're not just consuming content in this space, we're applying it. And I offer an opportunity to coach with me every single week in group coaching calls. There are 1 million resources at your disposal inside of this online vault. There are workshops, there's an amazing Facebook community, there's a lot of goodness. So if you're someone who is really done with diet culture and wants to be more self-directed in your health journey and really just in your life, I would love to welcome you into this space. Again, you can find out more about it by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. I hope I'll see you inside the arena. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.